We are in a beautiful oasis today. This is an area with a massive spring that flows directly out of the hill behind me. And this amount of water is cold, clear, and it has hosted and sponsored a vast diversity of wildlife and native plants, as well as some weeds. But it is truly an amazing area in a site that receives no more than 8 or 10 inches of precipitation annually. This is an area along the east of the Columbia River that most people don't even know exists, and it is in a true desert of the Pacific Northwest. The water from this is created because of a massive Columbia Basin irrigation project, which is east of us, and this water goes into the ground, hits a lens under the ground, and comes out towards and downhill towards the Columbia River. So we now have this massive amount of water flowing behind me, going down the hill, and it actually is enough water to sustain and allow the creation of a large state fish hatchery. We are standing in a spot known as ringgold. This water is loaded with wildlife and loaded with life. There are numerous types of plants here, and large numbers of insects and large numbers of birds. One thing that is truly amazing about this is that if it were not for the Columbia Basin Irrigation Project, this water would be very, very low and probably would not exist at all. But because of the large amount of irrigation that takes place to the east of us in the basin, this water is here. Some other amazing things is the massive diversity of native plants. And these are all plants that are associated with wet, moist soils. So there are very obvious plants like cattails, and there's also showy milkweed here, and all kinds of other plants that just allow and invite large numbers of pollinators. As I'm standing here, I'm looking at several butterflies flying around, even on this overcast, warm day. So it is an area that most people would never expect in a very low annual precip desert. But we're standing here as proof that water comes out of the ground wherever it has the opportunity, and wherever the lens and geology of the underground areas allow. This is an amazing area, and we're just glad to be here. We're standing here in a moist soil site that currently hosts a nice population of showy milkweed. Milkweed is a native, and it has to have some moisture during the summer months in order to survive. And this particular milkweed is growing in a fairly large number here, along with Canada thistle and prickly lettuce. Lots of people hate the thistle and they don't like the prickly lettuce, but these are all very important plants to pollinators. And we have both native and non-native pollinators that utilize this area. And I'm looking at a non-native, which is the European honeybee, which is on the Canada thistle. But the showy milkweed is the one that's a star here. And this is showy milkweed. Showy milkweed is invaluable to a native butterfly called the American monarch. And American monarchs feed on the leaves of this plant as caterpillars or instars. And the caterpillars start out as an egg, and they hatch out of the egg, and then they start feeding, and they eat the leaves of this plant. And in doing so, they actually take in a toxin that is in and produced by this plant. And in taking in that toxin, it makes them unpalatable to birds. And therefore their predation rates are cut way, way down, because most birds see the color bands of yellow, white, and black on those caterpillars, and they know, hey, don't touch it. So that is nature's warning sign, not to touch it. Black and white rings are a sign to most birds, don't mess with it. So black and white in the natural world is naturally a big red flag to most predators. That's why skunks are black and white. Leave me alone. So this plant produces a powerful toxin. The caterpillar can ingest it and deal with the toxins because it has certain enzymes and chemicals in its body that allow it to pull the toxins out of the mulched up leaf and store it. And that is its protection from predators. And then the caterpillar at the end of the summer forms a chrysalis, and it becomes housed in that chrysalis that it creates. And then it changes, it metamorphoses from a long, soft-bodied caterpillar about 1.25 inches or longer into this soupy mix, and then it reorganizes those cells that was a caterpillar into this beautiful adult flying monarch butterfly, which is a very large species of butterfly. And it is so gorgeous, but the whole process of metamorphosis is absolutely amazing. And another amazing thing is that the toxin that caterpillar picked up as a caterpillar metamorphoses with the caterpillar into the body of that adult monarch. And so the monarch has black and white dots all over its body, and that's sending a signal to birds, don't mess with me, you'll pay a price. And so most monarchs never get eaten by birds, never. And if a young bird happens to ingest a monarch, they end up having to vomit that animal out. So most birds don't even mess with them. But they're a beautiful, massive orange butterfly, native to America. The big issue is they are in deep trouble in the western United States. Their population is crashing. And it's all because of loss of habitat and loss of the showy milkweed and other milkweed species. So if you have milkweed on your property, I urge you to retain it, don't spray it, let it be, because those monarchs so badly need this plant for their survival. And the other amazing thing is these plants and the Canada thistle here and this prickly lettuce all produce nectar, which our native and non-native bees utilize every day during the summer months. So the milkweed hosts many, many insects that are vital to this ecosystem here. It's very, very important. The gift of milkweed is truly an amazing thing. One other thing that's very important here is that all kinds of other insects will crawl around and utilize milkweed, especially the nectar in the flowers. So really an important plant, and it's native. So please protect it. Thank you. After the beautiful pink blossoms of the milkweed have been pollinated, they start to develop these seed heads. And these seed pods have dozens and dozens and dozens of seeds forming in them that eventually have a silken balloon or a parachute on them. And late in the fall, these burst open and they come off of what is kind of a stalk in the center, and hundreds of seeds will drift into the moving air and float away. And so this is a plant that, for its own genetic variability, produces thousands of seeds in a single season. And once these pods, which will reach about a 3-inch length and bust open, once that happens, the seeds float away in the wind. And other seeds float in from other plants that have been pollinated elsewhere. So this is a plant that is self-seeding, and as many landowners know, that if you end up with one plant, later you'll end up with many plants. So it's a wonderful thing. So anyway, another plant right here is the common cattail, which is indicative of moist, wet standing soils. This is a seed pod that's coming up right here, and it's starting to develop lots and lots of seeds in that seed area. Cattails are super important to wetlands. Many birds nest in cattails. Many insects survive in the stem of cattails in the winter. And the other amazing thing about them is they are also wind driven. And so cattails will pop open late in the winter, and the wind will pick up those seeds and blow them everywhere. So the seed of the cattail and the whole cattail plant is edible. And tribes in the Pacific Northwest once ate cattail because it was nutritious. And I don't know about the taste, I've never tasted it, but they did eat it. Cattails grow in thick clumps, and we have a nice clump growing right here in a wetland. And they are a wetland indicator, so very important. Remember the showy milkweed and what it does, and the importance of the common cattail. Right behind me is a Northwest native woody shrub that is a wetland obligate, and it is known as the red osier dogwood. And this particular plant has all 3 stages of its development. It has the blooming flower, the developing berries, and the ripe berries, which are white. And this plant is extremely important because it provides thermal cover to many wildlife species in the summer. So when it's hot, like where we are right now in this desert, we're in the lower Columbia Basin, and it can reach 108, 110 degrees here. Yet many birds and small mammals will utilize red osier dogwood to escape that direct sun. This plant is also important to a species of neotropic migrant bird which migrates through here in the fall, starting in August. And it's a bird species known as the Cassin's vireo. These small songbirds feed on the white berries of this amazing woody shrub. Red osier dogwoods are frequently found in people's yards because they love the blooms and the white berries and the foliage of this amazing native. Another species of plant that we are looking at today is the purple loosestrife, which is a highly invasive non-native weed species that loves wetlands. And it is such an amazing plant because of the way it has adapted to growing directly in extremely saturated soils that are full of water. So this purple loosestrife has lipid covering around the roots, which allow it to withstand rot and injury from prolonged periods in water. And the only way I know to get rid of it is to pull it and let it dry out in the sun. Purple loosestrife has a gorgeous inflorescence or bloom, and it is a plant that attracts many species of pollinators. It was originally brought to the West Coast by nurseries who sold it to private citizens for their gardens. and that's how it escaped. And now it is a big problem in many wetlands in the Pacific Northwest. And wetlands in the desert areas especially seem to be really attractive to this plant. The color of the blooms of purple loosestrife is a chartreuse purple, and it is really gorgeous. And I can see why people would purchase this plant and put it in their gardens. But once it goes to seed, those seeds spread everywhere. And you never want to plant it in your garden. The last I looked, there were only 3 states in the western United States that don't allow the sale of purple loosestrife. And it is on the Class A noxious weed list in some states and Class B in other states. So it is considered a noxious weed, and as a landowner, you have a certain responsibility to remove it. This big slough comes off with a formation called the White Bluffs, which are on the eastern shoreline of the Columbia River, south of Vernita Bridge and north of Tri-Cities. And this is a massive formation that up on top of it is where a lot of agriculture takes place in the lower Columbia Basin of Washington. Because this particular site has received so much water from irrigation above, this whole thing is moving. And every year it moves a little closer to this road. So the interesting thing is the White Bluffs are part of a national monument called the Hanford Reach National Monument. And it is federal land, but it's open to the public. And it's an absolutely beautiful area. And growing on the surface of this massive slough are blazing stars, which is a native desert plant that has a spectacular bloom on it. And this is a plant that can grow and only grows where it is extremely warm and very, very dry. They do not like their roots in water. In fact, they will never grow anywhere near water. So they grow in hot, dry south and west facing exposures. This particular site is a huge area that came off the White Bluffs because of irrigation from agriculture. And it is slowly moving, and it's reached this road right now. And eventually, as time passes, it will move out into the road. If you look around, you'll see that there's rabbit brush here, a little bit of sage, but the dominant plant here is blazing star. And that is amazing because blazing stars bloom one day and then they're gone. And they will get pollinated in that one day, and they normally get pollinated at night when they're just opening up for the morning light, and that's when they get pollinated. So I look at this one and this one right up here. Most of the flowers have already been pollinated, and because we have intermittent clouds, they're starting to fold up. And when it gets a little darker and cloudy, they fold up. So they love direct sun, they love heat, and their name is apropos at blazing star. I'm standing in front of a row of plants that are growing like gangbusters out here, even though this is a very hot, dry spot. So you have to think about the energetics of this species of plant. And this is called a forage kochia. And kochia comes to the United States from Asia, and it came in trade, and then it was actually exported to the West to feed cattle. And it escaped, and now it is everywhere. And this is a kochia plant that's probably 4.5 feet tall. It is green, and lots and lots of herbivores enjoy browsing on kochia. The interesting thing is, kochia goes to seed in the end of the summer, and its seeds are minute little black round balls, and they spread everywhere. So they get caught in people's ATV tires, in their wheels of their pickups and SUVs. They get spread all along the road. And if you look along this particular road, you'll see that there's a line of kochia all the way along the road. It is not native and is now considered a highly invasive weed. But the interesting thing is it provides some important benefits to native wildlife, and that is it provides thermal cover to many insects on hot days. And yes, it will wilt down, but in the evening it comes right back up. So it is a weed, an invasive plant, but it does provide some benefit. So animals feed on it and wildlife uses it for cover. So it's become naturalized. It's been here so long. We are standing on the slope of White Bluffs on the eastern shore of the Columbia River, north of the Tri-Cities in Washington State. And I'm standing by a beautiful hop sage bush, which is a woody shrub native to this area that has gorgeous leaves right now that are turning red in fall colors, but the seed pods of the plant are this beautiful off cream, and it looks like flowers, but it's really the seeds. And this is a woody shrub that is extremely drought resistant and typically only grows on land that is on a slope. It is a bush that attracts all kinds of native desert birds, such as the black-throated sparrow, which we will see a little later, but it also attracts rodents and also some lizards for thermal cover during extremely hot days here in the desert. This is an area that has lost most of its hop sage due to fire, repeated burns. And so it's very nice to find this area with quite a bit of hop sage. The White Bluffs are a unique formation in a basin that's largely made up of Columbia Basin basalts. So it is not basalt by nature, and it is largely materials, loess and sands and other minerals that were laid down by floods. So very interesting, but amazing plant, only grows in desert situations and usually only on slope areas. Most of the water drains away long before this plant is starting to turn red and the seed pods are yellow.